I'm Mike AD, and welcome to the Delta League Podcast, Week 12. And we are going to start right out with the first game of the week. Monday, Montreal hosts Vancouver and Miami. And it happened. Miami wins! Miami wins! Miami 24, Montreal 21, Vancouver 19. It was beautiful. The buzzer sounded, the team spilled onto the court. The team really deserves this win. But now they have to put one win after another. Now, well, it may be happy for Miami, Montreal and Vancouver have the dubious honor of being the teams that lost to the Vortex. Now, Edwin Milligan got yellow carded in this match because he lost it after the match and whipped the ball into the crowd. I'd be pissed too, but watch yourself. Now, it won't be so good for suspended Vancouver player Kolas Hadi. He suffered a broken radius bone. It's in his right forearm, meaning he's going to be out for an additional 2 weeks beyond the original suspension. Now, for Montreal, leading the way it was Edwin Milligan and Angela Carlucci with 5 goals each. For Vancouver, it was Romeo Da Rosa with 5 goals, and Bernie Pukila with 5 goals, and Kofi Dominguez with 5 blocks. And for Miami, it was Marquette Weaver with 7 goals. And no matter how improbable it is, Miami picks up the 4 points. Montreal, 2. Vancouver, 0. Now, let's move on to Wednesday night with Chicago hosting Phoenix and Detroit. And in this one, Chicago wins it. The score, Chicago 44, Detroit 23, Phoenix 18. Now, the game started with Chicago player Oscar Zenga doing a rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and it was a performance for the ages. It totally sucked. Complete with vocal cracks and 3 ridiculous key changes. They will not ask him to do that again. Now, Chicago assistant captain Ivan Goss was sent for a conditioning stint to Milwaukee last week, but according to reports, this was a rib. When he arrived in Milwaukee, the team was there, and they threw him a surprise bachelor party. Goss is now married, and he's on his honeymoon. That's just too funny. Sorry, hun, got sent to Milwaukee. Congrats. Now, a few weeks back, a Phoenix player, Carlo Flamia, stated that the team needed to make some trades. Well, then the team proceeded to make 0 trades. Now, Phoenix fans on social media think they should trade Flamia. Too late, boys and girls. Too late. Now, Detroit had a movie star in the making with Anastasio Polimo. Now, as it appears, newly minted superstar Tommy Anastos will also be in a movie. The off-season is going to be fun for these guys. Now, for Chicago, it was Jamie Gilmore. Jamie Gilmore, he just got here. Jamie Gilmore, 8 goals. For Phoenix, it was Nick Hoja doing something productive. 7 goals. For Curly Barnabani, also with 9 blocks. And for Detroit, it was, Tommy Anastos, 13 goals. And in the end of this one, Chicago picks up the 4 points. Detroit, 2 points. Phoenix, nothing. Now, let's move on to Toronto for the Saturday matinee game, where Toronto is hosting Seattle and Philadelphia. And in this one, Seattle wins. Seattle 37, Philadelphia 32, Toronto 29. The Seattle team seemed to have a problem with the temperature in the arena. It was apparently too cold. There were some accusations of someone doing it on purpose to screw with the Pirates, but let's be serious here. Have you seen Seattle? It's rainy and miserable all the time anyway. Now, Samson Sartell celebrates his trade to Philadelphia by starting a brand new collection of yellow cards. Let's hope he does not fall back onto old behavior. The Shred need this guy to be a positive force, not a negative distraction. Now, for Toronto, it was Valdemar Odette with 5 goals. For Seattle, it was Laurie Moss with 12 goals, and Frank Viano with 23 blocks. And for Philadelphia, it was Travis Valencia, Lloyd Warfield, and Griffin Bricker with 6 goals each. And in the end of this one, Seattle picks up the 4 points. Philadelphia, 2 points. Toronto, nada. Now, let's move on to Washington, where the Power are hosting Boston and Memphis. And in this one, Memphis wins. Memphis 29, Washington 19, Boston 11. Some people online were going at Boston player Mike Blythe. And Mike Blythe did not take to it kindly. In fact, he announces on social media that if anybody has anything to say, they can meet him at center court. This should be fun. We haven't had anybody playing for Revolution beat the shit out of any fans lately. Now, Revolution player Vasily Rollins, he's out for the year, and he created a Twitter storm because I guess he was bored since he won't be playing any time this year. So he spent the whole night making AI videos of women cleaning toilets as an Olympic sport, morbidly obese people pole vaulting and exploding, and definitely hit a nerve, then proceeded to call them all weak pussies for having no backbone or sense of humor. It is funny to see Stephen Hawking jump off the top of a steel cage and crush Pee Wee Herman to death. Not gonna lie. Now, Washington player Elix Henderson did not play in this game because he suffered an arm laceration during practice when he careened into the goal. In 1 week, he should be right as rain. Now, for Washington, it was Chevy Colella with 5 goals. For Boston, it was Hobo Mickelson with 6 goals and Mike Brenton with 8 blocks. And for Memphis, it was William Meller with 6 goals and Carmelo McCall with 6 blocks. And in the end of this one, Memphis picks up the 4 points. Washington 2 points. Boston nothing again. Now, let's move on to New York, where the Fire Demons are hosting Denver and Atlanta. And in this one, New York wins. New York 35, Denver 22, Atlanta 10. Denver was pretty happy to make it to this game, in fact. Their team plane skidded off the runway and they narrowly escaped injury. Now, New York assistant captain Richard Mully has some new facial hair. It's a mustache, and the fans hate it, pure and simple. There's some pretty brutal critiques of the stash. He was questioned about it, and he said plainly, "I'm growing my mustache out this November because of Movember." mainly because a couple men in my family have come down with prostate cancer. So I want to show my support and do what I can, but I have a hard time growing facial hair, so I have to start early. It's quite pathetic, really. So I challenge the fans, if somebody puts up $1,000, I'll let you shave it off, personally. Now, last week Atlanta made some really smart moves at the trade deadline, but this week their acquisition Gerard Sredell has gone down with an Achilles tear. He'll be gone up for 6 weeks. When it rains, it pours. His season is on the edge of a knife because tomorrow he goes under it. Now, Grant Nahn, who was traded to Denver last week, he must have been just aching to break free. So he goes up for a goal, he celebrates, then steals a fan's beer and drinks it, only to find out that he had missed the goal. Talk about having beer on your face. Now, for New York, it was Rock Weinstein with 13 goals and Rhino Montalban with 6 blocks. It was for Denver, Pooh McCarthy with 7 goals. And for Atlanta, nobody mustered jack shit. And in the end of this one, New York picks up the 4 points. Denver, 2 points. Atlanta, nothing. Now, let's move on to Dallas, who are hosting LA and Salt Lake City. And in this one, LA wins this one. LA 32, Salt Lake City 12, Dallas 10. The discovery of a suspicious package next to the garbage can delayed this game for over an hour. Once they managed to open the package, they found it was a pair of Angel Reese sneakers. No wonder it didn't go into the basket. Now, Swarm players Felix Kolb and Reggie Joag Dev got black carded in this one, and the latter foul was pretty egregious. This is how it all goes down. Kolb takes a severe liberty on Clark Crapeau. He went down hard, but Bobby Sheffitz, those guys who are supposed to be suspended sitting by the bench area. Well, Sheffitz loses his mind, gets onto the court, starts going at Kolb. So the logical thing to do is to separate the guys and try to simmer down the hatred, but Dev goes after Sheffitz. Now, we haven't heard too much from Goldie Crowley lately, but she's back because she goes after Dev. She gets yellow carded. That's her 3rd yellow card. Then Dev shoves her, calls her a dyke. Out comes the black card. Dev can't believe that's a slur. Then he goes after the ref. The ref is scrambling for his physical welfare, and he puts his hand on the ref. Crowley, for once, tries to stop a fight. He punches her, and in the end of this fandango, we have 1 yellow card and 3 black cards from 1 single game. Now, it was a pretty raucous game, and it was officiated by 1 official, because the second official, Casey Stubbs, showed up to the stadium drunk. That's going to cost him 2 weeks. A salary. Now, for Dallas, it was Nathaniel Mansfield with 5 goals, and Anatoly Schaefer with, get this, a record 44 blocks in a single game. Now, for LA, it was Marty Hagar with 8 goals, and Salt Lake City with Erlai Ercolani with 6 blocks. And in the end of this one, LA gets the 4 points. Salt Lake City somehow gets 2 points. Dallas, nothing again. Now, let's move on to the standings. We got, at the top, Seattle, 40 points. Chicago, 38 points. Detroit, 36 points. Washington, 33 points. Denver, 28 points. New York, 26 points. Memphis, 25 points. And also Toronto, 25 points. Philadelphia, 24 points. And we draw the playoff line. there. Now, we got Miami with 22 points, Montreal 21 points, LA 17 points, Phoenix 15 points, Vancouver 14 points, Boston 11 points, Atlanta 8 points, Dallas 8 points, Salt Lake City 7 points. Now, here are the goal leaders after week 12. We at the top, Rob Donoff, 87 goals. Coming up second, Lori Moss, 80 goals. She's pulled within 7 goals of Donoff. Then Rock Weinstein, New York, 70 goals. Then James Corrin, Seattle, and Stefan Grice, Montreal, 63 goals each. Then Star Palmer, Chicago, 59 goals. Isaac Parker Johnson, Seattle, 57 goals. Venus Pilar, Chicago, 57 goals. Travis Valencia, Philadelphia, 56 goals. Finn Wehrle, Chicago, 54 goals. Chip Chiozzi, LA, 52 goals. And Mohamed Carnasale, New York, 51 goals. Our offensive players of the week are Tommy Anastos, Detroit, 13 goals. And Rock Weinstein of New York with also 13 goals. Here are the block leaders after week 12. We've got Vlad Millet, Seattle, 60 blocks. Cyrus Holleran, Denver, 59 blocks. Anatoly Schaefer, Dallas, 54 blocks. Kofi Dominguez, Vancouver, 50 blocks. Alan Adam, Memphis, 50 blocks. Harlequin Butcher, Philadelphia, 50 blocks. Then Emmett Ruan, Seattle, 47 blocks. Romeo DeRosa, Vancouver, 45 blocks. Lori Moss, Seattle, 42 blocks. Mike Brenton, Boston, 42 blocks. Frank Viano, Seattle, 40 blocks. Jimbo Grover, Washington, 39 blocks. The defensive player of the week is Anatoly Schaefer from Dallas, 44 blocks in one game. Now, here are the leaders in GXB rating after week 12. We have a new leader this week. Lori Moss, Seattle, 3360. Rob Donoff, Seattle, 3132. Vlad Millet, Seattle, 2880. James Corrin, Seattle, 2457. Chip Chiozzi, LA, 1664. Mohamed Carnasale, New York, 1530. Venus Pilar, Chicago, 1482. Star Palmer, Chicago, 1475. Isaac Parker Johnson, Seattle, 1425. Rhino Montalban, New York, 1394. We've got Finn Wehrle, Chicago, 1350. And Larry McMaster, Denver, 1344. And Gus Partenza, Montreal, also 1344. Now, let's move on to the league news. The gavel comes down on Reggie Joag's foul. Now, he's going to cost him more than just the season. In fact, it's going to bleed into next season because he was just handed a 16-game suspension. There's repercussions for punching one player, shoving two others, putting your hand on a ref, and a homophobic slur all in 5 minutes. That's pretty close to the most severe penalties we've ever had in Delta League. Now, the league has announced that starting next year, they're discarding the 18-team standings table and changing to a 3-division format. Since we're expanding next year, there will be 3 divisions of 7 teams each. You saw the All-Star game. It's going to be West, East, Central. Depending on where they expand, the divisions could look a little different than what we saw at the All-Star game, but it's to be expected. No word on the playoff structure, but I'd assume it's a 3-team per division deal. I'd also include a possible crossover wildcard because divisional parity tends to happen, and you definitely want the best teams in there. Now, in 3 weeks, which should be week 15, the 3 expansion teams will be announced, and we'll have way more details as to the changes to the division and playoff format. Now, more announcements from the league is that next year they're going to be adding some mandatory equipment, which will be a helmet and shoulder padding. The league sees this as a proactive move to stave off high rates of upper body injuries and concussions. Should be interesting to see how this padding will manifest in the design of the uniforms for next year. Now, Toronto has suspended their mascot, Mr. Tower, real name Chadwick Chow, for taking his costume home with him and doing not so savory things like going around the city, posing for lewd pictures in inappropriate places, photobombing people, sexually harassing women, making sex videos, and other mischief. This is the second Toronto mascot who's crossed the line between his life and his job. Now, rookie Keith Ogilvy, he's receiving a social advocacy award for his work with at-risk youth in the city of Los Angeles. The guy plays Delta, plus he's not an asshole. We need more players like him. Now, lastly, Miami owner Dominic Donato says he's not going to do Pride Night, whenever that is. He says this now. I don't want my sports combined with any political movement or social cause. People go to the arena for an escape, to forget the real world for a while. Instead, these teams are pushing sex identity, racial identity, American politics into everyone's face all the time, and it's annoying. And I think I speak for a great number of our fans and other Delta League fans when I say I don't want to see it. So no, there will be no rainbow uniform, no end racism written all over the court. There will be no social justice or other political advocacy groups displayed anywhere in our stadium, and we want to keep it that way, and we want our league's other owners, players, and fans to respect it. He said that if a player wants to display a discreet decal on their padding or wear colored socks of any kind, that's cool, but none of any of this shit, not allowed. Now, on to the mailbag. At Real Piero Barone totally called the Miami win over Maelstrom this week. Question is, what would your over-under be for the number of wins Miami scores this season? Miami is really overdue. Did you see the jubilation on their faces when the buzzer sounded? It was like they won the championship. And I'm really happy for the Vortex, but this win is at least a year and a half in the making. And just how many wins we will see from the Vortex this season? Well, this week they've got Seattle and Toronto. Good luck there. But the way Toronto is playing, they could get 2 points. And of the remaining 6 games, 2 of them are against Montreal and Salt Lake City. Those are winnable games. Detroit and Dallas 2 weeks from now, anything can happen. Toronto and Phoenix, New York and Philadelphia. Those are tough games that we would not expect to win. So I say 3. I think they can win 2 more games this year. Plus there's plenty of room for a few more second place finishes. Now, on to the Shop Zone. In the Shop Zone, we've got the Evan Parawal Chicago jersey, the Tommy Anastos Detroit jersey, and the Travis Valencia Philadelphia jersey. Get them while supplies last. Now, here are the predictions and games for Week 13. Start with Monday, where Boston hosts Detroit and Salt Lake City. And this is Detroit's opportunity to prove something to themselves, that they're a top team in this league and not just lucky. They should pour on the paint and incinerate these 2 teams from orbit. Salt Lake City's prospects are shrinking by the day, so I'm taking Boston to be the beneficiary of this charity case in a green uniform. Now, on to Wednesday, we got Atlanta hosting Memphis and Washington, and Memphis has really improved since the beginning of the year, when they were predicted to be one of the league's worst teams. It proves that coaching and character does matter in this league. That's why Ulrich Schultz won Coach of the Year last year. Let's face it, Atlanta is shitting themselves every week now, and Washington's inconsistent play makes these 4 points not so automatic. I'm taking Memphis for the upset again. Now, let's move on to the Saturday matinee game, where Phoenix is hosting Vancouver and Philadelphia. And Phoenix has been really disappointing, and Vancouver hasn't been much better. Philly is barely holding on to their playoff position, so they should slice and dice these two teams and take the 4 points the Shred so desperately need. Now, on to Denver, where the Lone Stars are hosting Dallas and New York. And Dallas needs this game, pure and simple. New York is looking like they could be a top 3 team, and not Denver, who started this year with such ferocity. Dallas needs to survive the next 6 weeks. And there might not be anything left to salvage by the time the off-season begins. New York for 4. And let's move on to Seattle, who will be hosting Toronto and Miami. And Miami got their first win in 29 weeks. I'd love to see Miami do it again, but I'm not stupid. Seattle is just too strong. And with Toronto's play starting to once again become inconsistent, they better watch themselves, as teams they thought were below them are ever so close to creeping up on their inconsistent asses. I say Miami lays a turd here. Toronto gets the 2 points. Now, lastly, LA is hosting Chicago and Montreal. And Chicago is clicking on all cylinders now. But despite that, I think this game will be a high-scoring affair. Montreal needs to redeem themselves after losing at home to Miami of all teams. Now, if LA exceeds expectations, they'll move within kicking distance of Montreal and complicate an already crowded playoff line. We'll see you next week, where the action will continue and never stop. See ya.
This is Delta 2.